how is business in your world going with this whole situation?
It's great. The first 2 months were weird. I mean, we were traveling. We took our family to see my in-laws in Park City March
Yeah.
6th. We were there like the 6th through the 13th or
Yeah.
7th through 14th. I can't remember. So the week before it was weird. And then when we flew, it was like uncomfortable. We're like, oh shit, we probably, and then coming back was definitely like, let's just huddle in the lounge and not get
Yeah.
sick. We don't know. It's like panic. And it was just like, I don't know. It's everything's a lot of uncertainty. There's anyone who said it was like business as usual. It's like really just full of shit, or they were too like, absent of the actual business, or they were just telling themselves that.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, I don't know what industries were going to just stop, or would the whole market go to zero? And why would you be mailing checks? Would there be mailmen, mailwomen, like delivering stuff? Like it was kind of odd. No one knew what to do really. It was like, should we
Yeah.
just like pause our business? Should we just like close? Should we keep going? Most people were pretty good about, clients were good about returning our calls and saying, hey, yeah, we're doing this, or actually, no, we need to pause. So we could get a good, grasp, but also running towards where's their new opportunity, where are their, new funding sources. It was just like, and then, on top of that, childcare and stress about healthcare and stress about like the system in the world.
Yeah.
Definitely made it for like a lot of kind of like late nights and, trying to just I was staying up late as heck just to like get quiet time, like just like with the kids asleep and like,
Yeah.
Nothing good happens after fill in the blank, 11, midnight, 1, but there's a lot of my Uber Eats bill went up.
That's great.
List
What,
of the wine collection
you
went
have
down, but
3 kids, right?
yeah.
Okay. I thought that was right. Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
you?
So what are you all doing for childcare?
Watching them.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't work on Tuesdays. Well, I mean, I kind of work on Tuesdays, but I'm pretty much watching them Tuesdays so my wife can work her business, and then Wednesdays my mom kind of steps in and we'll watch the kids for a little bit. But we only like kind of reintroduce. My mom lives like 5 minutes away, but we didn't see her until Mother's Day, so it was like 2 months,
Yeah.
or a month and a half of just being like, we don't know, like.
Yeah.
So very little. So we're it's the last week of school for everyone else is out of school, or the youngest is in preschool, middle one is in kindergarten, they're done. The oldest is in 3rd grade. This is last week. So like after that, we can sort of like make our own schedule, but the schooling for that, you have to administer. It's not like, oh, you'll be busy for the day. You got to be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't, get in trouble. Forget to log in, or like, they weren't used to using computers all day.
Yeah.
You have a charger. Like luckily I had these old laptops I gave, let them have like laptop. It's like, that was my computer. I'd be like, hell no, you're not using my computer.
Right.
Like, don't touch my keyboard with your like little sticky snack hands.
Right.
Like school can wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have kids, but I live in a neighborhood where a lot of people have small kids, and it's been so entertaining. 2 doors down from us is good friends. And I guess it was like the 2nd week of March, when this all still felt like very temporary at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the dad of that family jumped out of his side window because he was on a conference call, and his kids were so loud that we saw him like jump out of the window to get away from his kids so he could take a call.
Oh,
I was
man.
like, wow, these are the times that we're living in now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so he's okay. So at least it was like a first story or something. It wasn't.
Yeah. No, it was like I'm just making an exit to take a call.
Yeah. Because I was like nodding, including like, how high that window? Like I would jump out. Like my kids have driven me to that, but so that's cool. So yeah, well, I guess let's, give maybe your overview bio and what you're working on currently.
Yeah. So starting with just generally what Momentum does.
Yeah.
Okay,
and what Jessica,
cool.
I mean, this is Momentum, but it's Jessica. So
yeah. So, gosh, Nick, you and I have known each other now for over 6 years, probably.
Yeah.
So, my background is I've been in tech my whole career. Started at Red Hat downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. When that company was about 3,000 employees, when I left that company, I was only there for about 3.5 years. They were over 10,000 employees worldwide. And of course, we all know how that story ended. They're now part of IBM. So that was how I got my foot in the tech industry. And then I've been in the code school space since code schools existed, really, at least since they existed on the East Coast. So started working in the code school space in 2014, starting with working with you, Nick, with the Iron Yard campus in Durham, North Carolina, which that was up and running for about 4 years, and had a blast doing it, but really just understood that this is what the education, like we're in a time where a lot of things are changing, right? Technology's enhanced, all sorts of things in the world are changing, and education is going to be one of them. And so I just feel like I'm in this like really sweet spot of getting to see what that looks like and trying to make a contribution to it every day as we think about the future of education and the future of work. And so founded Momentum along with Clinton Dreisbach, my co-founder, in late 2017 after the Iron Yard wrapped up operations. And we've been running now ever since. And we've had a really big year. This is actually probably one of the biggest months for the company because we are doing a lot of new and different things. And we are doing it all trying to be in this new space everybody's getting used to with the pandemic. So it has been challenging and rewarding and a lot of work. I'm working at the end of my dining room table. And so it's been some back pain too.
Growing pains, back pains. I have like knee pain because I'm like actually using the Peloton bike that we've had at home in our basement for like 3 years.
That's great.
And I've used it. It's not like I was refusing to use it, but I'm actually like, okay, this is real. Like it's cool to use Peloton now. It's not just a thing that sits over there that's cool in commercials. I mean, I guess that sort of, there's a lot of threads there, but you know, you made the leap from kind of being the campus leader to an entrepreneur. And there was a little bit of a gap, but from what I know, there was really no doubt in your mind of what you wanted to do. But what kind of gave you the confidence to make that leap, and what was that like?
Goodness, I don't know if you ever fully have the confidence to make that leap. I mean, every single day it's like a new, you have to find a new source of energy, I think, for it. But I just feeling like on the right path, the right time, and really having a big community of people to help out and advise me. I was actually telling a friend the other day who had a conversation with a mentor of hers and got a piece of advice that was very different than advice that she'd gotten in the past. And we were kind of just talking about what that looks like. And it was like, well, when we started Momentum, I literally talked to everybody I knew in town that were entrepreneurs that had good business advice. And they all gave me really great advice. And a lot of the advice was contradictory to each other. And that's when you kind of just realize that like nobody really there's no right answer to this. You just have to follow your gut and get a lot of smart opinions. And then you, at the end of the day, have to make your own decision. But when we started Momentum, it was very much a community driven effort. We had people that, as our previous company was wrapping down, who just approached myself and Clinton and were like, are you all going to do this? It was kind of like this inevitable next step. I remember Doug Kaufman, former CEO of Transloc, entrepreneur in town, sat in his office to let him know when the Iron Yard was closing. And he just looked at me and he smiled and he was like, so are you ready to be a CEO? Are you ready to do this thing? And so there was just a lot of assumption, I think, from people in the community that we were going to do it. And I think that matched with our heart and what we thought we would be doing. And so it all came together in this like very natural way. I think I'm just very thankful that the path was just kind of laid out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then what about your kind of DNA and your story? I don't know if you've sort of undergone the study of knowing your story or any of those kind of like business and leadership exercises, but what, kind of in your, birth to now, do you think informed or influenced or had a positive effect on your kind of decision to be an entrepreneur, and then also to the success that you guys are having?
Yeah, it was for me, my education experience really informed what I am doing now. I am dyslexic. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 13 or 14 years old, after having gone through a lot of the steps in our public education system of going through an individual education plan, which is a federal mandate and all these things, and had been diagnosed with a undiagnosed learning disability when I was a child, and then had to go through, we're from I grew up in the area, so very thankful for UNC education programs and all the research that's done in our in our university system around here. So I had access to a lot of tools, but it wasn't until I was like early high school that it was identified that I'm actually dyslexic. And so a lot of things came together for me. But that created two things that are still in place today and what I do. The first is it gave me a perspective on education and the way people learn. At the time I felt dumb, but looking back on it, I wasn't, any smarter or less smart than any other kids, but you feel that way. And when you feel that way, you get kind of look at the system as we have it. And you can see, I think any entrepreneur is born from looking at something that they think that can make better, or they see a gap. And so I saw that as a child. And then the second thing it enabled me to do is when you have a federal IEP or individual education plan in your K through 12 system, as a student, you're required at the first week of class with every one of your teachers. And this was everywhere from my middle school, high school through college. You have to go get the teacher to sign this form, some like federal form. They got to sign it. They say, I acknowledge that you have this learning disability. And these are the accommodations that you and I have put in place so you can be successful in this class. So what that meant as a high schooler in the public school system in a big public school is I had to go meet my teachers every week, the first week of class. And that's not something everybody does. The bell rings, you go to class, the bell rings, you leave class. Not everybody has that personal relationship with adults, but I had to do that as a kid. And so I became a self-advocate. And I also had to learn, and I think these tools come in entrepreneurship, right? You have to be unafraid to ask questions. You have to be unafraid to make friends. You have to ask for what you need, what you want. And all of those tools I learned as a young teenager, and they've been around ever since. So that's kind of the origin of me looking at education, but me also having that grit and that ability just to have to adapt really quickly and have to understand that you need to have a network. You need to have partners, you need to have champions to be successful. I think that's a big part of entrepreneurship, is making sure you have those champions in your life. And so that started for me at a young age. And then really what started momentum, the true foundation of it, is I had a college advisor at the end of my senior year ask me, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to contribute to or have an impact on in your career? And I thought about it and I was like, one day I really want to start a school. I want to start a school that's going to change the face of education or help change the face of education. And in my head, that was something maybe when I was in my 60s and retired from a career in business and had resources to contribute to it, that I would do. It was always this like long-term pipe dream. And then I landed at a job at Red Hat 2 weeks after I graduated from undergrad. Learned a lot about the tech industry. I knew nothing about the tech industry before that job. And fast forward 3 years after that, I met an entrepreneur who was starting the first code school on the East Coast. And he asked me if I wanted to leave Red Hat and help him get this campus launched in Durham and essentially start a school. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually exactly what I had set out to do. I just had this broad intention. I wasn't married or didn't have any specific, attachment to specifics. And that was how I kind of got into the code school space. And sure enough, code schools are helping us figure out what the future of education looks like. They're helping us figure out how do you do retraining and reskilling with adults there, which is where education, I think, is going to go in a big way. And we just launched our first ever official partnership with a university. So we are now really officially in the traditional higher ed game in addition to what we do in Durham, which is training people, all sorts of people that come to see us to learn to code.
That's great. That's an awesome story. And what about, who do you surround yourself with now? I mean, do you have a peer group, or do you have other kind of accountability partners, or how are you kind of keeping on track?
Yeah. Um, I have a couple different groups of people that I seek out. I have a really close group of friends and women that I have gone on yoga retreats with once a year since I think I went on my 8th year yoga retreat this year. Those women keep me kind of spiritually grounded and just what matters most in life. So we have this constant thread, and a couple of those women are entrepreneurs. Especially when this whole pandemic started, they were kind of the go-to people of like, okay, let's talk about how to handle this in a really in a way where we can be observers of it, not just participants in the chaos. And everybody had to go through the process of determining, are you going to seek like PPP and all of that. So they've been really helpful to me in that sense. Also, just other entrepreneurs in town, the folks that came and helped us get momentum off the ground. I'm good friends with the guys at Full City Venture Partners. Jason Kaplan's been a huge help. Him and I went on a hike last weekend through the Olmsted Forest and just kind of talked shop. And I think we've got this really great community in Durham of people, that can just come together, and we all kind of know a little bit about what everybody does, and that is really helpful.
Yeah. And we had an annual tradition, you and I would see you at the airport when you're about to go to like Costa Rica.
Exactly.
At least like 3 times, I think I saw you there.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn. And I was like, shuffling kids, I think.
Kids. Yeah. I feel like you were always going somewhere cold, and I was always going somewhere warm or with the backpack.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, yeah, I mean, my in-laws live in Utah, so I think maybe we're like going to go there or whatever.
Yeah.
That's so funny. How important is it, like as a woman entrepreneur, to have women peer networks versus non-women versus just hybrid?
Yeah. It's a good question. And I think that's when it's obviously a lot of people are asking those questions right now. And I think about it a lot. I would say for me, I'm very grateful to have had a lot of male leadership, great male leadership. And a lot of male entrepreneurs have helped me get to where I am today. And for me, I think what women tend to bring to the table in my life is this like realness of what does work-life balance mean as an entrepreneur. And there tends to be more of those like the ability to have emotional conversations as far as like, how does your team feel? How are you handling those things? And those are conversations that I find a really great space with other women entrepreneurs. There's a group that gets together that's called like the Ladies That Do Lunch, that get together once a month, and we just talk about all the sorts of just really running our business, what everybody's dealing with. And there's a lot of conversations about how to manage your team, especially right now through the pandemic. How's everybody doing? How do you make sure everybody's, in a mental space, and checking in with just, people's emotional state, which is nice.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I mean, I think, I guess I've definitely seen, tunnel vision and groupthink in different groups that I'm in. And it's easy to sort of be like, all right, there's more perspectives to this. And it's not, I think it's like male, female, but also age. Also, there's a lot of, kind of things that go into each person. And if you have sort of a kind of a monoclastic group, you're doing yourself a disservice. For sure. And I've taken a lot of the business stuff I've learned, end up applying at home. So communication styles, understand, having empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, like knowing, telling your story, but I'm trying to understand their story, gaining a shared understanding, and then being able to have like a crucial conversation, whether it's that or just like the Enneagram, like what's your communication style, and like, this is what's going to resonate to you. These are what's important. to the person on the other end. But,
Yeah.
again, I think it's good to have people around you that speak your language as well as people that don't,
Right.
which is cool. So, I mean, education, you kind of stole my next one, which was going to be like, where are you at with like mental health right now? And what are you doing? And I was
Yeah.
thinking to myself, yoga and yoga retreats, but
Yes.
maybe speak to that more. Cause it's kind of a stressful time to be an entrepreneur. Obviously, it always
Yeah.
is, and now even more so, as it is for everybody in all walks of life. But what are you doing to stay mentally healthy and keep your well-being?
I would say it comes and goes in waves. When this whole thing first happened, I kept up my workout regimen. I was able to keep my routine. And then once it kind of became clear that we were going to be doing this for a long time, some of those things, I had to just change my routine. But I still get up early in the morning. I still try to prioritize moving my body in some sort of way, whether I have a little mini trampoline. I'm one of those people that's doing the trampoline workouts. You see them on social media. So I'll do that, or I'll try to do yoga or stretch and have my me time like early in the morning before I get online. That's been a huge help. But I also just cut out a lot of the extra Zoom calls. The first month of this, like everybody, my aunts and uncles and all sorts of people just like want to all of a sudden get on Zoom and have a Zoom party. And after a day of, being online, because this is what meetings look like right now, it just got a little overwhelming. So I've just kind of cut it out, and I've tried to turn off my screen as much as I can on the weekends. Of course, I do work on the weekends, but I keep it minimal, and I try not to take anything extra on right now, and just use this opportunity to like have, some quiet and reflection time.
Yeah, that's super awesome and healthy. And it's easier said than done. So I mean, you're doing it, like you just made it sound really easy. Like, oh yeah, you just get up and hit the gym and keep your whatever and cut your Zooms out. But man, it's impossible. Like I've got so many Zooms, and because I want to connect more with people, and I want to get this started. I had the plan to start these kind of conversations as content, as experience sharing, as gaining insights from the people. Like you said, we've got a great community. But this is a plan before this happened. And I'm like, well, I can't just sit still. So I'm putting more Zooms on my own calendar. So good for you for like kind of creating the space that you need to be your best self, really. I want to go into education, but I kind of like love staying in this like other kind of like lane of, psychology or whatever it might be. But what are you scared of right now? Or if you're thinking about like vulnerabilities where you're kind of like, this is something I've questioned that you feel comfortable sharing, obviously.
Yeah.
Whether it's because of the situation and some of the uncertainty or just in general as a business leader.
Yeah. I think for me, as far as I try not to frame it as what am I scared of, but I mean, you probably can relate to this, especially when we're still in our first few years of running this company. And there's some days, Nick, where at like the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, we got this. We've got this great product. We're doing so well. Like this is going to take off. And then like a couple hours later, some numbers will come in, or we'll be looking at something and I'm like, oh my God, this is never going to work. And you have both of those emotions in like the same day.
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely living in that right now, because so this happened in March. We were in the last 3 weeks of running a program, and we teach full-time immersive code school programs. So we were in the last 3 weeks of one. We had gotten to know the group of students really well. They were an awesome group of students. They had gelled really well as a group. And so we had to take them from their in-person experience and go virtual. And they adapted really well. It was actually pretty good timing because they were entering their final projects. And so it was fine. They knew us really well. We knew them very well. So it wasn't really much of an adjustment to put them on Zoom to have a conversation once you already knew their personalities. And so that was easy. And then it became clear that we were going to continue to have to be online even after that class ended. And we were going to have to welcome a new group of students and have to get to know them doing this. And so that was a real big experiment. We hit our enrollment number of 15 students, which is what we had aimed to do in April, and we got there. So at the beginning of this, we were kind of like, oh, maybe the pandemic won't have that big of an impact. We didn't lose any of the incoming students. because this is not going to be an in-person experience anymore. This is great. And we're going to learn how to get to know them over Zoom instead of in person and on a campus. And that went pretty well. And so we were like, okay, this actually might be fine for our business, right? We're able to do things online. People were able to adapt really quickly. It's going to be okay. And then probably a couple weeks into that, we started realizing now as we look at enrolling more students this summer, people are starting to have these questions of, hey, well, I have been accepted to this program. I really want to take this class, but I have healthcare benefits in my job right now. And those healthcare benefits cover my family. And I just simply can't give that up to take a four-month class. And so I want to delay my enrollment. And those kind of things are starting to pop up that are really pandemic specific that we just, we're learning as we go. And we're kind of in this period of time where we just know that to expect the unexpected.
Yep.
But we didn't have that, a couple of weeks ago. And I think what's happening is people are really getting settled into the idea that this is going to be a long haul. So that's been interesting. And so my co-founder and I had a conversation yesterday, like, do we need to change our model right now? And it just feels like we just went through the process of doing that. Because we did. We went from a 12-week program to a 16-week program that rolls every month. And we were so excited about that. And it's going really well from an academic experience. But, we've got to be able to enroll enough students to make the business work. So that's where we are right now. And that's, again, some days we have conversations with people and like, yeah, this is great. And some days, we get enough of those conversations of, hey, I really want to do this, but I need to wait until 2021 because of healthcare, because of whatever else. We're like, oh no.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's so funny. I think there's this one Simpsons episode, and I'm not like a watch all the old show rerun, so I probably watched this when it was actually launched as like a kid. And there's like Krusty the Clown or whatever. So they're in some like weird scene, and like Homer steps on this skateboard. He goes on this major ramp, and it's like, and he like launches off. He's like, he sees the other side. He's like, I'm gonna make it. Oh my God, I'm actually gonna make it. And then like, boom, doesn't make it. Completely crashes. And I like always think of that like all the time where I'm like, it's the feel, and it was hilarious because it's The Simpsons, and you're like, and then he's okay because he's like, no, I'm screwed, and he's like, wait a minute, I'm actually gonna boom crash, doesn't make it. And that's sort of like entrepreneurial life, which is so
it is.
funny.
It's like you go between like this is gonna work, this isn't gonna work multiple times a day.
Oh yeah. Like this is going great. Slack, like, did that deposit check clear? You're like, shit,
right.
Like, man, are we having, so that's always fun times. So yeah, I guess I want to talk about the future of education. So that's huge. And so our backstory, I'll try to recap in the intro or in the notes, of course, but I was simultaneously trying to get a code school off the ground when I met Peter, who's the entrepreneur out of South Carolina, started the code school there, had some campuses, and we decided to do a joint venture here in Durham. And you were the campus lead. So our joint venture took off and was doing really great. And obviously then the Iron Yard got acquired by private equity. And then once that happened, sort of thing just run its course, and they kind of refocused the business elsewhere a couple of years later. And that was what provided the opportunity in the marketplace for you guys to step right in and do it. So I'm super happy that exists. But I have a deep belief that this product should exist. And that's from my own kind of multiple personal stories. One is as an employer needing more supply, as an employer interviewer, seeing that said supply in local, amazing world-class institutions, universities in the Triangle, and being a student a long time ago, not having really much practical experience to do anything and just hoping that like a Fortune 500 investment bank or consulting firm hires me. And then I work there for a few years and then go get an MBA. It was like, that didn't feel like a great value after 4 years. And I was lucky. I went to a good school, went to the business school because I got good advice from like early classmates. And they had, and I got my job from my mom's cousin was at a company that got acquired by Bloomberg in Iowa. So she lived in Iowa or something. I can't even remember where they lived. But so I ended up working for Bloomberg in New York City selling financial software out of happenstance. It wasn't even, it was my mom's cousin. So it was like my third cousin. So like I ended up having to go deep into my own network to get like, oh, you should look here. And I applied and got like an internship. And So it's like that. So what did I get out of college? I love, UNC and all that, but it wasn't practical, and I don't know what I feel about that going forward. But so maybe what do you think about the future of education and how we need to embrace kind of the thoughts and philosophies that you guys are advocating for?
Yeah. So similar to you, I'll set some context. I have a bachelor's of religious studies and from the College of Charleston, so liberal arts school in South Carolina. I was one of those people that my parents are executive coaches, another context of my story. So they were already in the place of coaching me, if you will, to follow my passion. You're going to do well in school if you like what you're studying. And I love people, and religious studies is really the study of people in so many ways. It's every discipline from history to philosophy to psychology, all kind of in one. And so I studied religion in college. I studied abroad in India. I focused in Eastern traditions and Buddhism. It was an amazing time. I loved college. I was one of those kids that actually loved college. I loved my classes. I was fortunate in that I didn't have any college debt. My parents were in a position where they had saved and they paid for my schooling. And so when I graduated, I actually still have 2 giant Tupperware containers, those big ones that you stack with every college notebook, all of the notes I took from my degree, because I was like, well, my parents paid a lot of money for these notes. So I'm going to save them. And at some point, I have intentions of digitizing them. We'll see if that ever happens. But that was my experience. And then, like you, I'm a big believer in your network is how you get work. And that is something that we really express to our students. They have assignments about networking when they're in our program. I had a friend who had gotten a job out of NC State with Red Hat and recommended me. She referred me into a job. She said, hey, my friend Jessica's got, hard worker. And so 2 weeks after college, I had a great job at a tech company. So I'm very, very, very lucky. And I realized, that is not an easy story for people. And I work hard and I get along with people. So that makes a difference too. But I preface that in saying, as soon as I started working, I realized if you look at what has happened in my lifespan, so I'm 30 years old. In 1989, the year that I was born, same year as Taylor Swift. I like to remind people of that so they can understand the scope of age of what this has happened. When I was born was when AOL, You've Got Mail, AOL came out, right? So the You've Got Mail, that was 1989. So email happened when I was born. Fast forward to that, I graduated from high school in 2007. 2007 was the year where Facebook really took off, Airbnb got off the ground, Twitter had really started taking off between 2006, 2007. Hadoop came out, cloud computing came out, all of this came out as I was graduating high school, entering college. And then if you look at what has happened since 2007 to now, the world has really changed in a big way, huge, huge way, right? These didn't exist when I was in high school. They existed when I was in college. The world, the way we work has all shifted and evolved. And I set that also in the context of when you look at the way we work right now, the 9-to-5 American workday is an American invention. It was created by Henry Ford in 1910. Ford Automotive Company created the 9-to-5 workday, right? And we've been working in that workday, in that framework, Monday through Friday, 9-to-5 ever since. We have also been educating people for that type of work ever since. And that's what the education system, as we know it, has been built off of. Then something else happened in the 80s. Since the time that I was born, so going back to AOL started end of the 80s, early 90s. From that time until now, higher education has increased at a rate of 160% on the cost. So it's a rate that is way higher than the curve of inflation in the past 30 years. And there's a lot of reasons that has happened, but I think what you're seeing right now is this great bubble burst, because you needed a college degree at some point to get a white collar job. or get an office job, if you will. That shifted probably 4 or 5 years ago. We started seeing these announcements come out of Silicon Valley saying, you don't need a college degree to work at Google. You don't need a college degree to work at Facebook, because the rate of which coding and the accessibility and ability to learn how to code has shifted so much, and the way that we needed people in the workforce that could do that, and these companies desperately needed people that could do that. Code schools started coming about. There was a way to find education and a way to find people that were trained for the skill set that didn't exist before. And so these big companies that are really controlling our economy, if you look at Amazon, Google, Facebook, all these companies, top companies controlling the economy, they all said several years ago, you don't need a degree to work here anymore. So what you see happen is the rate of tuition to go to a traditional 4-year university has gone up 160% in my lifetime. And in the past 5 years, people are now saying, you don't need this anymore. And so we're at this weird time where a lot of the parents out there who have kids that are going into college, or the soon to be college aged kids, are still in this paradigm where they think and they believe, based off of years and years of data, that they need to get that degree in order to have a certain career outcome. Whereas at the same time, the sector that is really has the most economic power right now is saying, you do not need that to be able to work here. And it's going to take some years for that adjustment to happen. And I thought it would take maybe five-ish years for people to get really comfortable with the fact that you don't need a college degree right now. But then the global pandemic happened. And now all these college campuses, to your point, that provide this experience that's so much beyond what's happening in the classroom, are now turning into like Zoom University, and the experience is gone. And I talk to people every single day that I'm not going to send my kid to college in the fall. We're going to defer. I was thinking about going to grad school. I'm not going to do that right now because of the pandemic. And people are really questioning, what is the value of school? Why is it so expensive? And then all these colleges, because of that enrollment issue, are starting to break down and say, our business model doesn't work anymore. This tenure system of professors, the school that we work with right now, like, they've got tenure professors that have been around for forever, and they might only enroll 5 students in their program every year, but they're getting tenured salaries, and they haven't been in industry in a long time. They've been in the academy for a long time. And so I think what you're going to see happen is more collaboration with colleges that have really good brands, where they're no longer going to be these elite education institutions, which, by the way, is like total just marketing, right? That we have this, it came out, I think, a couple months ago. There's starting to be these reports. Do you remember, who's the woman from Full House that just got in prison for paying for her daughter to get into school?
Mm-hmm.
Lori.
Yeah, Lori
something.
Laughlin McLaughlin.
Aunt Betsy or Aunt whatever.
Yeah.
Aunt
She
Betsy.
was messy to Uncle Jesse.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So when all of that came out, the other thing, Nick, is that these college and university brands have had this brand of scarcity, right? And that's how they've justified those tuition. Oh, we only accept X% of our applications. Oh, we only accept this. And it's been a point of pride. And if you think about it, it's like, why is that a point of pride, right? That's saying that you're not providing what you do for mass groups of people. That's another piece of education that when we think about our admissions process at Momentum, that we're very cognizant of. You should not be creating like the Hermes brand, if you will, of like elite education. And that's a term I'm borrowing from Scott Galloway, who, I don't know if you follow Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher's Pivot podcast, but there's this artificial, luxury brand around colleges. And it was around these admission scores. And when all this scandal came out at the end of last year about celebrities who are paying to get their kids in school, it also came out that all these schools had been paying the College Board for student data on students that have the SAT or ACT scores that are right under their admissions acceptance scores. And they would send these kids all of this information about applying, encourage them to apply, to help them artificially increase, or I guess decrease, the number of accepted students. And so they could justify this raise in tuition and have desperate parents pay for it. And so all of this, I think, one, it's coming to light. And the pandemic has like massively accelerated and put the foot on the pedal when it comes to this change. And I think what we're also going to experience, Nick, like you and I know this because we've seen it now over the past 5-6 years, especially when we started the first code school in Durham. People that went through college even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they did not have access to computer science education that is relevant to what today's workforce needs. So we're seeing a lot of people have to cycle back in and into education. I don't think that's going to change. I think we're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives, because the way that technology, the increase in the curve of technology is such that we're all going to have to constantly be reskilled. And so I think what you're going to see is people coming in and out of education and then not having to take on this mass amount of student loan debt.
Yep. Man, well, you just said everything. And I think, our oldest is 9. And since 10 years ago, we've been saying the same thing, like, what's this future look like? And I think it goes further back than college too, frankly. I mean, it's a very archaic system, and it's bad. I don't like it. But to stay on the colleges for one sec, I feel like there's an opportunity for them to pivot and focus on things that they could do well, focusing on like value-based outcome, almost like healthcare. Like, let's not make education in a college like fee-based. Let's make it like value-based. Mm-hmm. Especially if the state's funding it or funding the debt. If you're going to fund the debt, wouldn't you at least want a return on investment? Yeah. Meaning, like, some stuff needs infrastructure, or if it is sciences based or computer sciences, or there's labs and equipment, stuff that needs to be like acquired and procured, and think about even the tooling and the retooling. Like, you still need some central body of expertise and excellence. Like, Google.com is great. Right. But you can't necessarily get the guidance you need to truly gain mastery over all trades, not some trades. There's a place for that somewhere, and they're so big, and they've got so much. They're so embedded into like state budgets, and like they've got endowments. I mean, the private school. I mean, UNC and Duke. UNC's got one of the largest public school endowments. I mean, I don't know how big, and Duke's got a very large private endowment. I mean, way smaller than Harvard and whatnot, but these are billions of dollars. So they just have too much money just to kind of like, whoops, we folded. Like, pivot's not worth it. We're folding. We're out, right? And there's value to be added to society, but like, how do they get across that hurdle? How do they, retool? Do they need to just break down the entire model and build it back up with the right incentives? And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, to your point on like the K through 12 education experience, having a 9-year-old, we've definitely learned, and I think there's a lot that's out in the space right now about what we used to do is a memorization game. Can you pass a test type of game? That's because of Google and the internet. You don't need that anymore. The skills that young people need are going to be entrepreneurial skills, or they're going to have communication skills, those hard things that a computer can't teach you. And so definitely starting to shift that way. And I think colleges and universities have probably, at least I can only speak to my college experience, have done that already, as the critical thinking skill, as the communication skill, as that debate skill. The liberal arts institutions have done that. I think the problem where we've gotten into a bad situation is just coming around the cost and making sure that the cost of getting that skill matches what you can make in the market, and then make sure that you don't get, we've got a generation that's in like, I think it's close to $1 trillion of college student loan debt. It's higher than credit card debt in this country. Student loan debt is higher than credit card debt in the United States. And that is going to be the problem. And I think it's, how do you incorporate some of those skills that the liberal arts teaches you, and make sure that you also have practical skills alongside of it? And do we need to rethink, does it take 4 years, for you to get a credential? And what are we actually saying with that credential? There's big companies around the area that for a long time wouldn't hire code school grads. because they would only hire people with a college degree. And I've had conversations and like, it's like over the past couple of years, we finally like chipped away at some of those institutions. But what I started realizing is what they were saying by, oh, we need somebody with a college degree, was we need somebody that's a culture fit to our company. And the bad sense of what that means is like, we just want to know that somebody can fit into our office culture, that they have similar backgrounds as us. They didn't actually care what your college skill was. You could have, like me, a college degree in religious studies. They just believe that you can come figure it out, that you fit with the culture. And so that's something that's been challenged recently as well. But I don't know if I think I just started rambling.
No, that was great.
Bring me back into what we were talking about.
Well, yeah. I mean, how does the university system sort of like pivot to be more value-based? And is it as simple as like ripping out the tenured professorship system so that you're always able to restaff and retool?
I think that's a big part of it. I think there's, we're going to have to separate like the college experience, which is so valuable, that you get to stumble along as a young adult with your peers through similar life experiences. I do think that's really valuable. So I'm not quite sure how we replace that yet, but I do think that we need to get rid of this admissions process that we have in place today. I think that we need to start looking at people's future potential. And colleges need to start taking a pride in being able to accept more people and figuring out an infrastructure where they can take on more students, especially if we're going to start doing classes like this over virtual means, even if it's live. We at Momentum have found that this is a good tool, right? Like we had assumptions before this forced experiment called COVID-19 that the online learning, or I shouldn't call it online learning, but this live over Zoom type of platform wouldn't be as effective as the classroom. And we're finding that that's not true. It's just as effective as the classroom. In fact, there's some benefits to it that the classroom doesn't have. Like this makes the classroom flat. When you're in an actual physical classroom, there's always somebody that's going to be sitting in the back corner. But on Zoom, you can't sit in the back corner.
Yeah.
Everybody's there on a screen. So I do think that the ability to put these like great professors that we've all come to know, like, Scott Galloway is a great example of this. Professor at NYU Stern School of Business. I would sign up for his class tomorrow. Open his class up to 1,000, 2,000 people. Get rid of this like artificial admission standards that's just been useful for marketing, and let people come and get this education.
Yep.
And let people do it while they work and while they're bringing in income, so people aren't taking on debt. And that enables schools to make the price lower per student, but still be able to make great money. And then what you're really relying on is the people that can be really good teachers, which means people that aren't great teachers are probably not going to have much of an opportunity in that world, but that's okay, probably.
That's right. So, I mean, it sounds like, what do you think the opportunities are for, technology to continue to disrupt multiple spaces, but specifically education?
Yeah, I do think we'll see more and more virtual education. I think the pandemic just forced everybody into that experiment, and people will be doing that with potentially like smaller group gatherings, kind of like book clubs or those kind of things. I do think people will still be hungry to have some in-person dialogue, but I think you can get a mass group of people learning the same subject through a really, really great teacher online, and then have smaller breakout groups in person. So I think we're going to see innovative colleges get online, and open classes up for people of any age group, get outside of that demographic of traditional folks that go through master's degrees or go through undergrad. I think that's really important. And I think they're going to be great institutions if they're able to do that. I also think we need to hire more people from industry. There is a school, I won't name it, but in a part of our state, not local, who reached out to us and they were like, hey, we would really like to hire one of your instructors to teach a coding class at our college this summer, the part-time coding class. And then they said the requirements are that person has to have a master's degree in computer science. And I'm like, do you realize that this is like what we do, and like, good luck finding somebody with a master's degree in computer science that wants to teach this class part-time. and teach people JavaScript, right? Like it's just hard. And so we're just gonna have to start getting that old institution and that old way of thinking broken down.
Yeah.
And get people from industry. I mean, look at do you follow the masterclass?
Yeah.
I get advertisements for them all the time. It's a great example of like people from industry wanting to do online classes. We don't know if that experiment's going to work or do well, but it's a good example of like,
yeah,
you can do that.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I mean, this topic has been something that has been important for years, if not more, but now we are sort of getting the great accelerator of this pandemic, which is impacting a lot of things. And it's the great pause, and it's bad for, a ton of reasons, but, the acceleration piece, it's going to get you to that endpoint a little bit faster. And it's been really eye-opening, almost to a shocking degree, to let your mind wander and be like, wow. So there's like exclusivity, the opposite of inclusive. Mm-hmm. There's access issues. There's all these things that are that people at these same fucking colleges are all like, oh, we need to solve in society. But like, wait, what about inside the walls of that place? Harvard, right. Whatever. We give 3 scholarships a year, whatever. I don't know how many they do. Yep. And that's not, I don't mean that. And that's one very small piece. The other is like, how many of these things are now funneled into these doors and then not funneled, and how much progress is being stopped, how much population health and population wealth and income gap would be closed if we had a better system, I mean, it's like, man, if you democratize, it's like, sign up for this class, and all of a sudden it's about the class and it's about the quality and the outcome, not like go into my tight exclusive funnel and then you're a part of this institution, which is the Well and the Bell. Like that's UNC from their commercials, but and I like it too. But it's just what would that future look like if it's really about get the skills you want, be able to. I mean, is this like politics in the 90s or 80s of healthcare that crosses state lines or whatever? I mean, I don't know. I can go get a class from anywhere and build my own portfolio of subject matter expertise that I want to grow in and that's relevant. And in 8 years, if I need to retool, I can go right back and do that super efficiently and just sort of scaffold it together, and now, bam, I've got a new game plan. Yeah. And that's more jobs. And it's what's the difference between UNC and community college? It's really maybe that professor that they recruited. Great. Well, they can still make money by recruiting and promoting the best people. But if no one takes their class because it's higher price than this other thing, it's more of a market-based system on outcome.
Yeah. And I think it will make the cost get reasonable again, because there was a point in time in our history, not that long ago, that higher ed in the United States was affordable, that more people had access to it or could figure out access to it, or their loans could be paid off in a couple years after school instead of taking a lifetime to pay back. Yeah, right. So, it's not that long ago that we had that. And then I think I'm a big believer that industry is going to have to start paying for some of the skills that they want, which is again, that's kind of back to the future. That did happen. My granddad worked for General Electric when he graduated high school. And it was a different company that was acquired by General Electric, but he started working for this company in North Carolina. They trained him on engineering skills on the job through an apprenticeship. He worked with them forever. General Electric bought the company. He was with GE, and then he retired with a pension, right? That was that's only one generation removed from where we are today. And industry was responsible for training. And we somehow got away from that. And I do think that we're going to have to go back into that space. And I'm having conversations, we had a conversation several weeks ago with Netflix and Apple and some big companies that are really starting to look at, okay, we've been putting all this money into scholarships for 4-year institutions. Now we're thinking about not doing that. We're thinking about putting money into what you all do and paying students to go through code school, because that's one, the skill set we need, but two, we're seeing a really big value return from that experience. So I think, universities are going to have to really shake it up. And I think there's some that have done a good job. I think NC State locally, I've been really impressed with their entrepreneur center. I've been really impressed with, what they've been doing as far as some new technology and engineering that's really interesting in this space, and they've been able to keep it affordable. I used to be a UNC fan, and I still am fairly agnostic. But I do think the schools that have put similar to companies, the schools that have put their students first and not their ego first are going to be able to figure this out. And they just got to be open-minded, and they're going to have to break a lot of things internally about these old assumptions
Yeah.
that
And
we've
so do
had.
you think school, like bottom up schools can kind of iterate and get themselves there? Do you think there has to be like a top down, like monopoly breaker, like government, like shake it up?
Yeah. Well, most of our universities are public, and momentum is regulated in the community college system. So I have some experience with regulations. There's definitely going to have to be some regulatory changes. The way that the regulatory systems are structured right now are based off of legacy systems, and that's going to have to shake up. So even if the schools have a bottom up approach to trying to shake something up, there is government involvement that's going to have to be, it's going to have to collaborate with them on getting rid of some things that just don't make sense anymore. Uh, for example, I was just reading, this conversation is relevant because I was reading Thomas Friedman's Thank You for Being Late recently, and I'm not finished with it yet, but one of the things he mentioned is like there's usually like a 10-year curve from something that happens, some innovation that happens. Government usually takes on like an average a curve of 10 years to catch up to understand how to regulate it. And like we're not going to be able to do that right now. Like these walls have to get broken down, and regulators and government's going to have to figure out how to change very, very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different similarities to other threads I've had. One was about industry, like investment goes where the industry goes, or industry drives it, meaning, technology can uplift people. Some people think it's like, oh, it's negative, it's going to take away jobs. Like, well, it might not. What if there's a call center? What if there's an automation plant that has human management oversight? Well, the reason a municipality like rural North Carolina, like, why would they ever invest in that or be interested in it? Well, it could be someone who comes there who does it because they have the advantage of a captive audience and they can train a pool, a labor force. But like, there's not, incentives are going to only follow that job creation engine, or training programs, or getting the community college system or the private market education system up on those, kind of training programs only happens as a knock-on effect of someone innovating and creating this opportunity and knowing that there might be a need. There's probably going to be more needs in distributed places. If we need more people, local time zone, whatever, we're going to have to look at these other towns. This isn't like the right analogy, but sort of like, manufacturing or automaking specifically was like a big major industry. And then it was sort of like ... tech. And these tech jobs are all overseas. And it's either because of training or cost of living or tax policy or whatever. So now they wouldn't have been the same mill work or whatever, but like they would have been maybe call centers, maybe assembly centers, packaging, shipping. Like it probably would have been a good level of like, middle layer jobs that supported these that could have all potentially been domestic had we, whatever. The other thing we talked about is government and university being like 10 to 15 years behind. And so breaking that wheel. So I love the quick pivotability. What does it look like even as a professor to say, I've got to be ready to help people retool every 8 years? Or maybe that just means my professorship isn't forever. I'm going to be an expert right now, but if I don't invest in continuing to be an expert, I'm out, and then I'm going to get recycled, and then I got to go get retooled.
Yeah. Or it's, this whole concept of a sabbatical, it's getting people in and out of industry constantly. Or not drawing that separation line. Maybe it's always somebody that's in industry that's able to teach. And we're going to be able to, through technology, be able to magnify their message even quicker. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, okay. No, this was, provocative to say the least. And I like we'll do the silver lining, which is this has been a big accelerator in these conversations. This would have been an uphill battle, or, you've been an advocate for this for a long time, and people were listening, but now, all of a sudden people are like, wait, what should we do? And you're like, hey, how are you? I've been here for like 6 years and longer. And so I hope that this is, a moment where you can start to further shape the future of education so that we can increase our well-being worldwide. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're Eastern religious studies. That's pretty Buddhist. We want that. And it's not bullshit. It's not like, it's not just like, I want to get super rich and then I'm going to donate. Like these have real impacting or real ways to impact many far and wide. And I think I want to, see you help hit this. The last thing I was going to say, which was almost, it was a joke, but it was like, so 20 minutes ago, it's still on my mind, but it was just like, are those ear pods or is that a halo over your head?
I've got ear pods in, so I can
religious
audio.
All right, cool. Well, any closing words, thoughts, comments, things you want to share with the, 2 or 3 people that will ultimately
watch this? Well, I think to your point, the good thing about humans and what we do and how everybody's gotten here is that we all learn how to adapt. And I mean, I think this is the biggest time for everybody to be asked to adapt and be smart and innovative. And I'm going to leave you with an example. I 4 or 5 years ago took a class called the Ballet Burn with this woman who is a alumni of the Carolina Ballet Theater. She created a course or class, a fitness class that is all based on ballet movements and ballet conditioning, but really to awesome music. It was great. I went every Tuesday, Thursday morning at 6 a.m. when she taught this class. She moved to Dallas, and I have taken her class if I've gone to Dallas for a work event over the past couple of years, but have really missed it. The pandemic started, and she runs a small business where she teaches these classes in person. She has a studio in Dallas. And so she said, I'm going to put everything online and I'm going to test out audio. I'm going to try all sorts of different things to make sure my classes are still engaging over Zoom. And she got all the North Carolina girls back. And we are all now consistently taking this class. It's $25 for a drop-in, right? And she's probably doing better business than she did before when she had the constraints of a physical classroom in Dallas and people that have to be there at 5:30 p.m., right? Getting through Dallas traffic. So she might have 8 people in a class. And now the other week she had over 40 people signed into her Zoom class. And to me, that is such an example of a business that going into this was probably oh my goodness, this pandemic is going to hurt my business. My business is in-person classes that are taught to music, and I have to correct people with ballet moves. And instead, she's doing it over Zoom, and she's still calling us out for, hey, your arm's broken, all that kind of stuff. She's still able to do it. And I think that's just a really smart example of how people are adapting. And that's what entrepreneurship is. So to everybody out there.
Yep. That's great. Yeah. And hopefully, this is a good lesson in let's not fight change for the sake of change. Let's all be willing to adapt fast. The faster we get over that first hurdle, the faster we can be thinking about solutions and risk mitigating. We don't want to just be all wild, wild west on things as important as health or education, but we got to get over some of these big blockers quicker so that we can be a more resilient society and human race, humankind, whatever. That's a great story. And you're, an inspiration, awesome entrepreneur, awesome person. And thank you for doing this. And I appreciate you and good luck. Keep fighting the good fight and bringing the future of education to all.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. And hopefully next time I won't see you on my standing desk that is an ironing board at my house.
Who knows? We'll see. But, all right,
good luck with all the childcare. Take care.
See you. Bye.
Bye.